I'm Rusty Hudson, CEO of Diversified Energy, and you're watching Taking Stock.
First. This is a first.
Welcome to the broadcast, Wednesday, April 15th, 2026. This is not only the day your taxes are due, let this day in the history of the financial markets be remembered as the day the S&P 500 is expected to close above 7,000 for the first time ever. The great Einstein of Wall Street, Peter Tuchman himself, joins me for yet another hat day here on the trading floor of the big board. How did we get to 7,000, Peter? It doesn't feel like it.
I have no idea, to be perfectly honest. If I had asked anybody out on the street, have we been up for the last 11 days, everyone said, no way. We're in the middle of this conflict, this war market. It's sort of eroded 7-8% of its value over the last 6-7 weeks that we've been in the conflict. But we once again find ourselves at record highs. It's unbelievable, the resilience of this market. I think one of the biggest factors is that people are afraid that when we actually, are able to settle this conflict, this market is going to the moon. And that's not a prediction, ladies and gentlemen. It's just the way it feels here. The fact that 7,000 is a massive milestone in every respect, right? The S&P 500, the biggest footprint of stocks representing the U.S., our economy, and whatnot. The fact that we're going to close above 7,000 for the first time in history is huge.
You've had these hats, we're almost out of time. You had these hats for a long time. When did you have to make the hats to get ready for today?
You know what? I have to sort of manifest when we're actually going to hit it. I had them when we touched it the last time, but it's been a while since then.
We've only hit it intraday, and here we are for the first ever close. Wednesday, April 15th, above 7,000. Peter Tuchman, thanks for being here. Time now for the closing bell. And there you have it. The team here from Stat. It's absolute chaos. There's so much going on right now. I can barely hear myself think. You want us to go talk? Can we talk? Can we say hello real quick?
Yes.
Thank you all for being here. What a historic day. Hi, everyone. Wave to the camera.
Hi,
Can you?
From Pine Street School.
And we know where that is, but tell our viewers where it is if they're
We are right across from the New York Stock Exchange, and we're so excited to celebrate today with the New York Stock Exchange.
That's awesome. Well, thank you all for being here. And they all wore their green, which is great because we have a lot of green here for the stock market today.
We love green, just like you do.
That's awesome. All right, everyone, cheer and wave to the camera one more time. Thank you all for being here. All right, rock and roll. Like I said, there's a lot going on down here on the trading floor. At this hour, your final tale of the tape, the S&P 500 is up 0.8%. Skylar, hand you that. Thank you. The Dow is down fractionally, however. Weakness in some of the most weighted Dow components on the day. That includes Goldman Sachs and Caterpillar. Caterpillar down about 3%. As those two stocks go, the Dow tends to go as well. The New York Stock Exchange Composite Index in negative territory, 0.25%, while the small caps, the Russell 2000, up, it looks like 0.3%. The crypto majors moving higher. Oil benchmarks flat to the downside on the day. Gold and silver both down as well. And you got to mention volatility. The VIX now with an 18 handle, earlier on the day reaching 17 and change, its lowest level going all the way back to February 12th. That and much more sets the stage for our first guest. He joins us via Zoom. Brian Jacobson, Chief Economic Strategist at Annex Wealth Management. Brian, you're joining me for one for the history books here on the trading floor of the big board. As you look up, what do you see across these markets?
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's a really exciting time to be there, be here and to be joining you. And it is really exciting to see the S&P hit that 7,000 and actually break through it. A lot of people would think that we'd be closer to 10% down as opposed to now, say, 2% up for the year. And I think a lot of it is just because the market did really realize that you can start looking through this conflict as to what's on the other side of it, as opposed to being so fixated on living through it. And I think that's really going to befuddle a lot of investors where they're like, how, with all the chaos in the world, the conflict isn't even, how can the market be hitting new highs? And I think the simple fact is the market looks through it. We're going through earnings season. So far, the banks, it's been a little bit weak, but provisions for loan losses were actually better than what I was expecting. I think we're going to see an acceleration of merger and acquisition activity as the year goes on. So the market is just looking through the chaos right now.
Yeah, a bit of downward pressure on Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan. Let me get your prognosis. What are you looking for the rest of the slate of earnings reports? Got a few other consumer-facing brands set to hit the tape the next few days. We'll hear from Netflix. We'll hear from Pepsi. What will you be paying attention to as earnings season rolls along?
Yeah, what I'm really focused on is the health of the consumer. I think that's always, the big focus, especially since I'm more of the economic strategist, right? What's on the econ side, it's so much that it's consumer driven. How much are businesses able to push costs higher and protect their margins? If we look at the beige book that came out today, it was eerily reminiscent of the beige book that came out a year ago, which was after Liberation Day with the tariffs. A lot of it was talking about businesses being in wait and see mode, worried about input costs going up, compressing their margins. But businesses did a great job this last year protecting those margins. Now, what is that going to look like going forward? Because we know that the consumer is a little bit more winded this year than what they were last year. Wage growth is still above inflation, but it is only about 0.3% year over year higher than inflation than last year when it was a full percentage point. So consumer isn't in as quite of a ruddy shape as they were last year, but I'm still expecting that when we hear from a lot of these more consumer facing companies that they are going to talk about how maybe there are some clearer skies on the horizon.
Brian Jacobson, we got a lot going on down here today for the broadcast. We have to leave it there. Please come back and see us again. Brian Jacobson, Chief Economic Strategist at Annex Wealth Management. We're going to swing around this way, Todd. We'll bring you the biggest analyst calls on the day that moved the tape today. Wells Fargo reiterating Apple as overweight. They say they are bullish ahead of the company's earnings report later on this month with a new price target of $300 a share. Rocking and rolling, Fernando. Next up, J.P. Morgan reiterating Broadcom, that's AVGO, is overweight. They say we're bullish on the company's partnership with Meta. Broadcom shares now up 7 days in a row, up 10% year to date. Finally, Citi reiterating NVIDIA as a buy. They say we came away from NVIDIA's Quantum Day even more bullish on the stock. NVDA also up 11 days in a row. Talking about momentum, we'll take a look at one NYSE notable, and it's Cloudflare. This is, of course, ticker symbol NET. Piper Sandler upgrading Cloudflare to overweight from a previous rating of neutral. They say it sees a great entry point for the stock. Shares are down about 5% on the year, but the average one-year price target sits at $233 a share. That's upside potential off the 190 level of about another 24%. And now Cheddar's very own Justine Miller recently sat down with legendary astronaut Chris Hadfield to discuss the Artemis II launch and much more. Here now is part one of their conversation.
As Artemis II just returned from traveling around the moon, the convergence of space exploration, artificial intelligence, and private capital is redefining what possibilities lie beyond Earth's atmosphere. Joining us now to discuss all of this and more is retired Canadian astronaut, former commander of the International Space Station, best-selling author, and board member of Atomic 6, Colonel Chris Hadfield. Thank you so much for being here today.
My pleasure. I agree with you, Justin. What an exciting time in space travel and space exploration and space commerce.
Yeah, there's just so much going on here. We have so much to get to. So, first of all, tell us, what are your thoughts on the Artemis II mission? What does this mean to you as someone who's been up there, who's splashed down, who's done a lot of the things that these four astronauts have done?
First off, it was an extremely dangerous flight. First flight of that rocket with people on board, first flight of that spaceship with people on board. And they didn't just go around the world where they could, come back in a hurry. They fired their engine and left and went to the moon and no way to turn around, for 6 or 7 days. But, and then, of course, coming back into the atmosphere when the heat shield hadn't worked perfectly on the unpiloted trial, all of those things stacked up, and yet perfection. The vehicle was immaculate, very safe return. Early reports are the heat shield did great. And what really, I think, changed things was the humanity of the flight, the sharing of the human experience, the terrific ability of the four people on board to express what was going on, and the digital imagery of the moon. Yeah, just an amazing, amazing flight.
It was incredible. I even watched live the moon flyby part of it that was telecast NASA's feed, and it was incredible to hear the astronauts up there actually describing what they were seeing, trying to communicate with people on Earth. Just almost magical experience to get to be a part of that, even from down here on Earth. But as someone who's been up there yourself, and again, who's gone through many of the things that these astronauts went through, what do you think was going through their minds as they took off on this massive adventure, but then also as they splash back down? What do you think they were feeling?
The first 3 days, they would be feeling mostly anticipation, because the real purpose of the flight was to get to the moon. And so the first 3 days, you got to get over the motion sickness, when suddenly there's no gravity, and then checking everything out and hoping that there's not going to be some sort of problem. So sort of, getting yourself ready. But then as the moon started getting bigger and bigger, they were overwhelmed. And what happens is your emotions sort of get trapped behind you. You don't have time to properly absorb and react to what's happening. So what you end up doing is, as you say, sharing it, recording it, talking about it, taking pictures of it, doing everything they could so that they had all the evidence and all the memory of it as complete as they could possibly manage, because now they have the rest of their lives to figure out, what does this mean to me, and what does it mean to everybody I know, and how am I going to share this? And then a little bit of time on the way home, as they close the 250,000 miles between here and the moon. And that's when I was emailing with the crew, because finally they could catch up and actually send some emails. But with the Earth now getting bigger and bigger, and knowing that this is a largely unproven heat shield, and coming in as fast as anybody's ever come into the atmosphere in history, twice as much energy as when I entered, just because of the increased speed. And but the vehicle behaved again perfectly. Everybody did their math right. And for me, that moment when they were coming out of the communications blackout, where the ship is surrounded by electromagnetic energy, as soon as Houston said, we're getting data from, integrity from the Orion capsule, it's like, great, they survived. The vehicle survived. They're going to make it. And then, the commander checking in, and then the 3 parachutes. I was also thinking, imagine the people that packed those parachutes years ago. There's somebody somewhere who packed those parachutes into their bag and made sure everything was just right. And imagine how they felt when the drogue chute pulled, and then poof, out come the 3 big parachutes, and there it is, safely returning. I bet you there was a lot of relief right across the board, but especially for those parachute packers.
Well, it's just incredible. Thank you so much for being here, Colonel Chris Hadfield. So much to talk about. I could talk to you for hours. We really appreciate all of your time today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Justine. Pretty exciting week in space travel, and way more to come.
Welcome back to the show. You are watching Taking Stock live from the trading floor of the New York Stock Exchange. And at this hour, Jolie Kahn joins us live from the trading floor. She is the CEO of AVAX One. Welcome, and thanks for taking some time. It's really nice to see you.
Thanks for having me today.
AVAX One is positioned as a gateway to the on-chain economy. What does that actually mean for investors?
That means that if you want to get exposure directly to the AVAX token, that you can get it by investing in our stock, and also further being able to really be part of the Avalanche ecosystem.
What should people know about the AVAX token if they are somewhat unfamiliar with the general premise?
Well, it's a unique token. There's a limited supply, which means that over time the value increases. It also has the ability to have staking, which means that you earn more revenue off of the coin. And the third thing is that there's a fee burn. So whenever there are fees transacted in Avalanche, after that happens, those are taken out of supply. So again, it increases demand because the supply gets scarcer.
What do you think traditional investors can learn, or what can they gain from learning more about the broader digital asset treasury space? And why do you think it might be a potential lane of investment they might want to consider?
Well, as time goes on and as we implement various regulations, there are guardrails set up so that it's really is something that looks more like a TradFi play. And on top of that, it's exciting to get involved with a blockchain that's got a lot of good uses.
What would you say are some of the benefits of AVAX-based treasuries?
Some of the benefits of AVAX-based treasuries are the fact that it's a newer crypto, so there's more novelty in it and more chances and advantages to really getting involved, and also that the people surrounding this treasury are very experienced. We know what we're doing, we have a great team, and looking to help our shareholders.
Before I let you go, what is the biggest regulatory risk to operating at the intersection of Wall Street and crypto?
That we need to get good regulation in place across the board, and that once we do it, we'll really have a set path. But until then, it's a little chancy sometimes.
Jolie Kahn, CEO of AVAX One, please come back on the show and make the case anytime. It's really nice to see you today.
Pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
We got a lot more taking stock coming up on this history-making day here on Wall Street. Don't go anywhere. More show after this. Woo. Yeah.
Well, joining us, Matt Hogan, who is the CIO of Bitwise Asset Management. Matt, why is buying Bitcoin like making two bets at once?
Oh, absolutely. That's right. When you buy Bitcoin, you are making two bets at once, and this explains why it's rallying during the Iran crisis. The first bet you're making is the one we're all familiar with: Bitcoin as a store of value, a version of digital gold. But you get along with that this extra bet that someday Bitcoin will become a real international currency that's used to settle international transactions on an apolitical financial rail. It's the only instrument in the world that can do that. The reason it's been rallying during this Iran crisis is that you see the probability of that happening grow. Why? Because Iran sits at the center of sanctions, of the weaponization of the SWIFT network. You're starting to see countries talk about settling major international transactions in Bitcoin, the only apolitical currency you can do that. That's starting to happen during this conflict. That's the reason Bitcoin has been rallying. It's a nice 2-for-1 bet.
Well, let's take a look at the other crypto major, which is ETH. And crypto spot trading volumes jumped 18% over the last week as the broader market shows real signs of recovery here. But ETH has outperformed since the war broke out. So where do you think crypto goes from here? And do you see an alt season on the horizon?
Well, look, I think there are a lot of positive catalysts in crypto right now. You have major firms like Morgan Stanley launching Bitcoin ETFs. You have firms like Charles Schwab telling investors that they should put between 1 and 8% of their portfolio into crypto. Specific to Ethereum, you have continued growth of the stablecoin and real world asset space. Stablecoin AUM just topped $300 billion at a new all time high. You have all of this happening at a time when the prices are still well off their all-time highs. I think that the conditions are ripe for a pretty strong rally into the end of the year. As regards an alt season, I don't expect a broad-based alt season. The era of crypto where all coins rallied is over. What we're going to see toward the end of this year is well-positioned assets, assets like Ethereum, assets like Avalanche, assets like Solana, assets like Chainlink, assets like Hyperliquid. You'll see select high-quality assets rally, and then other assets that aren't finding real-world traction, those will fade into the background. So not a classic alt season, but to be clear, there are real opportunities in high quality alts if investors can pick and choose between the winners and the losers.
Yeah, and building on what you just said, Matt, I do want to get your take on crypto equities. So if crypto breaks out, do you think investors should expect stronger gains from some names like Strategy? And also, what about funds in terms of ETFs?
Yeah, absolutely. I do think Strategy is well positioned for a rally in Bitcoin. It's almost like a levered bet on Bitcoin, so you can expect it to outperform when Bitcoin is doing well, underperform when Bitcoin is doing poorly. I'm really excited about some of the crypto specific financial services firms, firms like Coinbase, firms like Circle, and indeed packages of those firms. We run an ETF BITQ that holds the largest pure play equities in the crypto market. I think they may be systematically undervalued by the market. They don't realize the degree to which America's financial rails are moving on chain. People don't realize the speed at which that is happening. These firms captured in ETFs like BITQ are going to benefit from those trends. I think that's going to become extremely apparent in the second half of the year as we get more progress on regulation, more major Wall Street firms building in this space. So I am excited about that space as well.
Well, Matt, we will have to leave it there for today, but as always, great talking to you. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for all of your insights.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome back. I'm Scarlett Sieber with Money 2020, and we have a great guest for you today. We have Andrew McCorrick, who is the head of US for eToro. We've got a lot to talk about. So, Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for being here. Excited.
We're really looking forward to this. So, just not that many months ago, Andrew, just back in May, eToro went public. I'm curious from your perspective, what's changed since being public, and how have you really kept that social piece of your investing into your DNA?
Yeah, what's hard to believe is less than a year. Feels like maybe like 5 years ago with all the news constantly. But look, before the IPO and after the IPO, eToro was passionate about making investing more accessible, more social, more global, and that's still the case. Certainly with an IPO and now a publicly traded company, it's all about transparency and timing and reporting and diligence and corporate governance. And those are critical, but those are always part of eToro's DNA. We've been a highly regulated company for a long time, and so prioritize those things. So it's a big moment for eToro, for sure, to ring the bell, to be publicly traded, but it's one step in a long journey, and it's all about transparency and breaking down barriers for investors still.
And when you talk about that, one step in the journey, and obviously that journey has been incredible. You're 40 million users globally, which is a great number. When you think about both you and your global CEO, Yoni Asia, have both talked about the importance of really moving past this short-term crypto hype. Let's talk a little bit more about what that looks like, and how are you really thinking about building, long-term wealth?
Yeah, it's all about education and empowerment. So it's awesome whatever gets people's attention. Maybe it's a meme stock, maybe it's some crypto like that's off the charts that gets your attention. But love to see people stick around for the long term. And to me, that's all about education. Number one, learn about markets, what it means, what's an ETF, what's an option, and to take those small, snackable sized education moments to learn and grow. And then to feel empowered to do so, right? Don't put all your money in on day one and like just YOLO it, right? Learn a bit or grow a bit. What's great at eToro, you can make investments as small as $10. So you may have a favorite stock, a favorite crypto, ETF, options trade, and you're not sure exactly how this works. Give it a chance. Try it with $10. And also with the eToro community, we have 40 million users who aren't just on their own buying and selling. They are talking about investments, talking about markets, finance, news. What a priceless way to learn. So sure, we've got the YOLO meme traders, but most people are in it for the long term, and building that long-term wealth is education and empowerment.
We can't not, it's 2026. We can't not talk about AI a
Of
little
course,
bit.
yes,
So
it's cool.
I am really curious how what eToro's stance is on AI, and so much of the time here on the show we talk about hyper personalization. How are you all utilizing AI within your workflows and for your customers?
Yeah, we use it constantly as eToro employees to make us better, stronger, faster, more efficient. When we think about investors, our view is that eToro, our view is AI is a priceless co-pilot. I still think these us humans, we should still be in charge and make the decisions, but what a great tool, right? Retail investors, first, most people don't care. They are out living their lives, taking their kids to soccer games, working, doing errands. They don't have the time to think about this. AI is such a great shortcut.
So we're so excited at Money 2020 that you're joining us in October at our US show. And
Yeah.
of course, Yodi is going to be just a few weeks from now at our Europe show speaking. I would love to hear, because I find, I follow you on LinkedIn as we talked about. I love seeing the things that you post. Where are we going from here? What does the rest of 26 look like? Of course, for eToro, but more broadly, any trends or things that you're getting excited about?
Yeah, so I think at the core, it's all about freedom, right? So I'm 43 years old. When I started learning about investing from my grandfather, like it was literally like opening a newspaper, going into a person's office and saying, "My grandson really likes Nike. Can you buy him a Nike share?" and paying $20 commission. So I've seen a lot of change, and I can candidly say I've never been so excited about a moment and opportunity. And that's because we're seeing markets, the walls and barriers tear down, becoming more accessible. AI is making education more accessible, more rampant, giving retail investors a fair shot. Blockchain, digital assets, crypto are making this whole system faster, more efficient, more accessible, and ultimately giving people more freedom, power, and control of their own money. And it's hard to think of a better place to talk about freedom over your own money than Money 2020. So looking forward to it.
Well, thank you, Andrew. So many great points there. Accessible, faster, and freedom, all things that I think everyone wants to be.
Yes.
Very optimistic lens. We're looking forward to that. Thank you so much for your time. For everyone else, Andrew McCormick, head of US for eToro. You can find him in Vegas in October, or the CEO Yoni over in Europe in June. In the meantime, back over to you.
Tomorrow morning here on Wall Street, we will get quarterly results from the first ever company to trade right here at what is now known as the New York Stock Exchange, all the way back in 1792. The Bank of New York, now of course called BNY Mellon, founded by Alexander Hamilton. Shares of BNY up 12% year to date and up a lot more than that from the 1790s. Thanks for watching today's history-making edition of Taking Stock. We'll see you again tomorrow. Woo!